I love nature, but wow, can that stuff be graphic sometimes? Here's one example. So, I grew up in the United States, specifically DC, and for anyone who isn't from here, I feel like a lot of people tend to think of DC as a bunch of government buildings where no one actually lives and there's hardly any nature to speak of. But for those who do know the area, you'll know that we do have a lot of people here actually. Not a single one of them is represented in Congress, but I digress. But we also have a lot of nature too. There's this big forested area called Rock Creek Park, which is, get this, a park that's home to a creek with rocks. Riveting, I know. Now, Rock Creek has a ton of paths going in and out of it all over, and when I was growing up in the area, I would go on these walks all the time. And so there I was one day just walking my usual path when I look up ahead and I see a creature. Now, before I get into which one, let me just preface it by saying that there are a ton of animals that live in the park, and as someone who was in there a lot, I knew most of them. But the ones you'd see day to day were either deer, which were absolutely everywhere, or the kind of generic small critters that you'd expect to see in any vaguely forested area in the US. There were squirrels, rabbits, plenty of birds. At night, you could see bats, raccoons, foxes. In the creek, there were ducks and turtles, even some snakes around. One time, I even saw an honest-to-goodness bald eagle. All that to say, there weren't many animals that I wouldn't recognize, but in that moment, I could not tell what this thing was. Just that it was not a person, and that it was big, dark, and seemed to be turned away from me, eating something. Now, since I was far enough away to not really be sure what I was looking at, I had to decide what I wanted to do. Either stay and wait it out, or turn around and go back the way I came. I figured I didn't want to mess with it and I would just go back. But it must have been on high alert or something, because before I could even turn around, it noticed me. It perked up and all of a sudden extended a huge pair of big, shadowy wings. Yes, wings. I froze where I stood. My little lizard brain was trying to decide whether it was about to fight or flight. Like, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't realize this was the hunting ground for the demons of the sky. My bad. Terrified for a moment that I was about to get carried away by a flying monkey or something, like this was Oz. Now, I had been going to these woods for many years at this point, and the only large birds I had really gotten the chance to see were the blue heron, which is, blue, owls, which are nocturnal, hawks, which can be scary but definitely are not that big. So, safe to say I was kind of freaking out. It then flapped these giant wings it had with big, slow flaps like it was a dragon or something taking off from the ground, and then flew off like I had startled it.
Yeah, you better run. No, please.
As it was flying away, it flew closer to me, probably to see what had disturbed its meal, and I was able to get a good look at it and realize that it was a freaking vulture. Redhead and all. Later I learned that it was specifically a turkey vulture. Not that I had ever taken a class on this, but I thought vultures were more of an exclusively desert thing. Like, what are you doing here? Aren't you supposed to be with your friends circling something about to succumb to the elements? But I knew vultures were generally considered harmless, and since the danger that was never really there in the first place was gone, I decided to just resume my walk. And when I got to the point in the path where it had been chowing down, I discovered that from its leftovers, it had been eating fox. I'm not going to draw it, but just take my word for it, it was fox. Now you might be confused why something called a turkey vulture was not eating, turkey. But that's apparently because it gets its name from the bald red head that it has, which looks like a turkey's. Who wore it best? Or rather, who didn't wear it at all best? Is that right? So for those curious, from what I understand, vultures are like crows, in that they eat dead things called carrion, but rarely ever do the killing themselves. They mostly just find something that's already dead and eat it where it is. So what happened was probably that either something else got to the fox first, or it was already sick, or it had an accident, or some combination of all of them. But the vulture just found it and was like, hey, free food is free food. Now you, dear viewer, may think that vultures are super gross or super scary, and I'm not going to fight you on that. But I had never seen one before, or seen one since. And honestly, I thought it was a super cool experience. You know, especially since I did not end up getting attacked by some monstrous creature. Survived another brisk nature walk, Andy. Good job. But it was just something about catching this giant bird that I didn't even know was in the area in the middle of what I'm just going to call doing a nature, and then flying off into the trees like the shadow of death itself was just one of those cool nature moments that sticks with you. Seeing the circle of life like that all up close and personal, for me, was really crazy, even if a little gross. That being said, though, if I never saw one again, I probably wouldn't complain. Thank you all so much for watching. If you made it to the end of this video, please know that starting this channel has been a labor of love for me. I've always wanted to do creative stuff like this, and these kinds of projects take a lot of time and energy. So if you enjoyed this and want to see more, please show your support with a like, a follow, and ring the bell, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.